Welcome back to Creating Your Life. This is Sex and Romance, episode 37, Sex and Intoxication. Hi, Mark Andre Alexander, back for more Creating Your Life. We're starting a new segment on sex and romance, and I think you're going to find this really fascinating. A lot of things that I'm sure you already know, but there'll be some things that I guarantee are new to you that you might find very fascinating and helpful. This is not a sex guide. That's not what this is about. It's kind of understanding how men and women work, how male consciousness, female consciousness works, and some things you may not have thought of, especially in terms of romance, love, and what you're really looking for. What I'd like to do is start off with something where I want you to just kind of relax, sit back, and close your eyes. I want to tell you a story, and I just want you to relax and listen to it. In my younger days, in my early 20s, I was in a couple of rock and roll bands. I was a keyboard player, played Fender Rhodes piano, one of those big, clunky 88 key things, and anybody who knows about Fender Rhodes knows how heavy they are. Uh, those of us who are our own roadies, it's a lot to lug around. And my first band, it wasn't a very functional band. We didn't even have a name. In fact, we only played one party. But it was that one time, the first time we played at a party, that I learned something crucial, that no matter what, you could be in the most dysfunctional band, but you'll still have groupies. I remember we were in the middle of a song and playing, and one woman who had been drinking, a young woman, came up to me, whispered in my ear as I'm playing, "I want you." And being young, for me, that's all it took for me when we broke for a break. She and I walked down the street. We found a house under construction that was kind of out of the way so nobody could see us. And we pretty much indulged ourselves as far as we wanted to go while we were there. Later, I drove her home, but she wasn't done. And so we pulled off to the side of the road and we continued on. It was a very heady experience for a young guy and a young woman both of whom lacked discrimination and much of a sense of anything. Because years later, she came up to me and she looked different. She introduced herself and reminded me who she was and said that she had given up drinking because drinking was something that lowered her discrimination and it didn't lead to good things. I was slightly embarrassed, but even then I was still pretty young, and I didn't fully comprehend till later the significance of what she had said and what she had done. Now, some years later, I was teaching. I'm still in my 20s. I was teaching as a graduate student at a university, and I found out that groupies, that bands weren't the only profession that had groupies. When I was a teaching assistant, another teaching assistant, a female, a woman, came up, told me, she said that since I was a decent looking guy, just be aware that half of the females in the class would be in love with me. And I found that rather hard to believe, but in a way I found that to be partially true. Over time, it began to be clear that not only were half the women enchanted with me in interesting ways, but some were even had downright lust and were very obvious about it. When I was at a business college, I was very popular. I was a different kind of English teacher. I had spent the first class breaking molds about what an English class and an English teacher should be. And so I was very practical about what I taught so that they knew it was going to be valuable. But it was really clear that there were females in the audience who were always dressing in a way trying to catch my attention. And at first I wasn't all that aware of it because I was very focused on teaching. But after a while, they made it pretty obvious. And I love teaching. I did have enough of a sense to know that I should never have a relationship with a student. Although once, especially in a business college setting, once the student days are over, then I began entertaining some ideas. And I remember in the beginning, there was this one 22-year-old woman who really dressed it out and really eyed me and would say suggestive things. But as a student, I wouldn't do anything about it. And in this particular time period, the last class she was taking with me was a 20-week class that started in June, was ending in October. So class was over, and we were actually having a Halloween party at school during the day. And it was a dress up contest kind of thing. So what I did, I got together with a roommate of mine, a woman who she was almost my size. She had a dress that would fit me, so I dressed up as a woman. And even though I had a beard, she dressed me up in a scarf, a dress, nylons. She added mascara and lipstick. I looked pretty cute. I knew I was going to be the hit of the Halloween party, and sure enough, I was. In fact, it was very embarrassing because the women tried to look under my dress. They wanted to see if I was wearing anything other than the nylons, and I wasn't. And I kind of realized that was a mistake. So I had to keep my dress down. Plus, even there was one 55-year-old woman who pinched my butt. I couldn't believe it. But for some reason, now I understand. But at that time, it was kind of surprising. Women found it really sexy. And this one woman, this 22-year-old sexy, curvaceous, voluptuous young woman, she and another were whispering, and I would catch them eyeing, and it was really clear what they were talking about. They were talking about what they would do to me under that dress. Um, I won the prize, which wasn't really a surprise because I was both a popular teacher and um, nobody else came in second with their costumes. I was really the talk of the area, and especially with a student population that was mostly female. So at one point, I'm walking up the stairs. There's this enclosed stairway leading from the courtyard up to the second floor of the college building, and I followed up. I went up, and she was following me, and she said something to me. I suddenly heard her say, "You know what I'd like?" And I said, "What's that?" And she said, "I would like to bleep your bleep." And I caught my breath and stopped and turned. She was half smiling. She was shooting me a obviously lust-filled look. And she leaned forward and brushed her lips against mine. And there was nobody in the stairwell, so she leaned in even more and began kissing me. And it was amazing. I don't remember much other than we had agreed that we would meet a couple days later at my home. She lived far away. I was within walking distance of the college in a downtown area. And one thing she said, though, she said, "If I bring something to you tomorrow, would you wear it for the following day when we were going to meet up?" And I said, "Sure." So what she brought me was her black lace underwear. And so sure enough, the day of, I wore it. It was the first and last time I ever wore women's underwear, for the simple reason that, boy, it's just not designed for men and not all that comfortable. But the day came, and there was something about that underwear. I realized that women, it's almost like there's this secret desire to claim ownership of a man. And that's the feeling I got from her. It was very interesting. So the day of after school, and after she was done with her classes, I was home. She arrived at my front door. I let her in. We didn't say much as I led her to the bedroom, kicked off her shoes. She turned her head up to me and we kissed, and with a lot more heat than before. She pulled me close. I could feel her entire body from her breast to her thighs pushing against mine, and I responded. Obviously, my heart started to race. My breath was catching. Um, I put my hands in her hair. It was in a tangle of wavy hair. I kind of clutched at the back of her head, kind of in a strong way, which she really liked. Her tongue kind of played across my lips, over my teeth. There was her breath in my mouth. She smelled like gardenias or something, a little bit more musky, but a powerful scent. And I know it's kind of a cliched way of saying it, but she tasted like ripe fallen pears or something. Anyway, there was no hesitation, no doubt, no reticence. We were, she pulled back slightly from the kiss, and my hand was now on her neck. And, turning my head, I pulled her in to nuzzle my ear, and she started kissing me down my neck, and she began undoing my shirt. And so I pushed her back, and as she removed my shirt, I began removing her blouse and her bra. And that was an incredible sight. Boy, and I started really breathing heavy then. Then she started kissing the middle of my chest, and I was cupping her and rubbing my thumb over her gently, and her fingers were on my sternum, and then feeling my heart pulse. And then, her skin was really delicate and moist, and she began undoing my belt while lightly kissing and licking, across my stomach and down, and her nails were kind of sharp against my lower back. I began playing with her hair. She arched her back. She was looking up at me, smiling, and she had one hand stroking the back of my thigh. And I was looking down at her, half closing my eyes. And how do you feel right now? Is your heart pumping? Is there something intoxicating kind of racing through your veins? Isn't it interesting how words, just mere words, somebody talking, can induce this kind of intoxicating feel? Even if you're reading something, just black squiggles on white paper. Isn't it interesting? You could read a story about people being intimate, and it just fills you with something. This is really important because it surprises me when I think back to sex education classes or health ed classes in college. I don't really recall anybody saying that the sexual energy had this kind of power and how important this was. Here's the upshot. Sexual energy, it's intoxicating. I mean, literally, chemically intoxicating, just like drugs, just like alcohol, and they affect judgment. You could be saying no and resist something, but as the sexual intoxication gets inside of you, your judgment can get warped, and you can begin engaging in behaviors you wouldn't do otherwise. And this is why I find it interesting that parents would, counsel their children about drugs and alcohol, and especially the idea, especially when you're drinking, how you could start finding your judgment affected and engaging in behaviors you would not normally engage in, and doing stupid things. And I think many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. And sexual energy, it's the same thing. One of the things we need to understand and what this series is about is that boys and girls are different, physically, emotionally, mentally. Same with men and women, obviously, but that there are some real differences. But the first thing is that sexual energy can lead to things that otherwise we would not indulge in. And it cannot always be in our best interest. This whole segment will help you in a number of ways. First, it'll help you understand that there are real and valuable differences between men and women, both positive and negative. One's not better than the other. They're just different. And if you really understand the differences, that helps. It'll help you explore how male consciousness is like a line and female consciousness is like a circle. And, it may seem kind of obvious, but I'm going to articulate it in new kind of ways that I think you'll find fascinating. It'll also help you be aware of the keys to romance, both before and after marriage, how to be more romantic in the right way. And here I think I can guarantee that I'll be giving you some tips that you've never thought of. Know the different kinds of love. There are several kinds of love, and knowing the differences among them will be very helpful. And finally, it'll help you realize what constitutes a real marriage, a real friendship, and real happiness. Because at the end of the day, even though we think we're aiming for sex and romance, what we're really aiming for is happiness. And so understanding what happiness is and how it's different from things like pleasure or satisfaction is important. And we'll get into that. Okay, that's all for now. For the next episode, we'll talk about what girls should know about boys. In the meantime, you can go to my website, marcandrealexander.com, and check out my book, Sex and Romance, What You Should Have Learned as a Teen.